Professor of Food Development at University of Turku, and welcome you all to our webinar, Do Science, Art and Technology Spice Up Our Future Food Experiences? This question was raised by a group of researchers and artists from different disciplines of food science, technology and art, and we were discussing the future visions of food experience and dining. Technology is an increasingly diverse part of our lives, and the dining experience is no exception. However, the essence of eating remains unchanged. When we eat, we share a common experience and we are together present in a unique moment. The moment of dining is the core element of our community. And this is also the case in the technological world. We raised the question how to harness technology to serve that age-old meaning of communal dining. Could the combination of technology and art provide an experience of a shared meal with a friend, even if we were sitting alone in our kitchen on the other side of the world? How could we enhance the feeling of communality and commensality by combination of technology and art? Maybe transferring the movement of the fellow diner's spoon into shared soundscape, and then further into the tactile sensation of your neighbor's body. And we should also learn how do these new technologies shape the sensory and emotional experience of eating and dining. For example, how does cheese and wine flavored with virtual technology taste like? And during the autumn of 2021, our group has been working on these new spices of future food experiences, focusing on communality of dining and its importance in the digital world. And in this December webinar, we sum up our results so far. We have chosen fermentation for our artistic forum and virtual and mixed reality dining examples, because fermentation is the technology that humans have used to produce foodstuffs and beverages since the Neolithic age. And we want to acknowledge this ancient technology and connect it with the most recent ones. You can see here the program of the webinar. The webinar is divided into two sessions, which both are divided into presentations on science and then presentation on art and technology. And after each session, there will be time for questions and discussions. And for the webinar participants, the chat is open all the time for questions and comments, and they will be shared during the discussion. This first session is entitled From Neolithic Times to Virtual and Mixed Reality Dining. And it takes us from fermentation and the world of microbes via human sensory experience into the possibilities of virtual and mixed reality dining. And by these words, I welcome our first speaker, Professor Lucrecia del Federico from National University of Quilmes, Argentina, to take us to the world of microbes. Lucrecia, please.
Thank you very much for having me here today. We are talking about fermented food, the other domestication, wine and cheese. The domestication of plants and animals during the Neolithic allowed humans to organize settled societies and develop technological innovations for the treatment and conservation of food, cooking, drying, salting, smoking, and of course, fermentation. The fermentations provided new foods with a wide range of flavors, smells, and textures, and in many cases, more digestible than starting materials. The earliest evidence of great Wine and viniculture came from Georgia in the South Caucasus regions, dated around 6,000 years before Christ. It is the earliest biomolecular archaeological evidence for grape wine and viticulture as we know it in the West. And it is crucial to the later history of wine in Europe and the rest of the world. The oldest known evidence of cheese making are pieces of pottery full of holes discovered in Poland of about 7,000 years, with remains of dairy fats in them. The first farmers had used this object to separate the curd from the liquid whey. Simultaneously, and most likely by chance, the domestication of bacteria, yeast, and molds also took place, mainly through artisanal food production practices, such as the serial reinoculation of new foods with materials from previous food. These practices led to the selection of microbial communities adapted to the characteristics of the food to be fermented. Neolithic humans so harnessed the metabolic capabilities of microbes while they were trying to improve the digestibility, palatability, and shelf-life of their newly abundant food. So fermentation is one of the oldest biotechnologies applied to meat, fruit, meat, and grains to transform and preserve them by microbes. Despite that, the fact that wine and cheese are such different food matrices, they both depend on interaction between microbial communities for their development. The structure or composition of these microbial communities differs between both fermented products, but a group of microorganisms plays a fundamental role: lactic acid bacteria. The basic manufacturing process is the same for all cheese. Actually, it's a dehydratation process of milk. Rennet and starter cultures are added to the milk coagulates, the coagulum is cut, and the whey drained. The remaining curd is pressed into a form and allowed to ripen. For fresh cheeses, the curd is cut and drained, but not pressed, and they are not allowed to ripen. What actually differentiates cheeses and strongly influences the final products is the use of different starter cultures of microorganisms, the presence or absence of molds, and the method of separation of whey separation and ripening methodology. Also, variations in size, shape, and added or all ingredients added. Other ingredients added are lead to the local production peculiarities and almost infinite variety of cheeses. According to their role, the microbiota involved in the process of cheese manufacture and ripening are starting lactic acid bacteria, such as Mesophilic lactococci or Leuconostoc, thermophilic strains of Streptococcus thermophilus, which are typically used for the production of semi-hard and hard cheeses, and adventitious non-starter lactic acid bacteria, mainly lactobacilli. The starters are responsible for the acid development during cheese production and contribute to the initial ripening process. The non-starters have been shown to play a contradictory role during ripening by enhancing flavor and sometimes deteriorating cheese quality. Flavor develops in cheese by the combining metabolic activities of microbial communities on milk fat, milk proteins, and milk carbohydrates. The main carbohydrate is the lactose. The depletion of lactose in cheese curd is essential to avoid the development of undesirable secondary microorganisms, which will negatively affect cheese quality. The citrate present in milk constitute a secondary energy source for some lab, and the co-metabolism of lactose and citrate leads to production of carbon dioxide and aroma compounds such as diacetyl. The major lab metabolic pathways involved in cheese flavor formation are metabolism of lactose via glycolysis, metabolism of citrate, and metabolism of the fat, lipolysis and proteolysis, and the subsequent metabolism of amino acids. In some cheeses, secondary microbiota is added to enhance proteolytic activity during ripening. They are molds like Penicillium camemberti, Penicillium roqueforti, and Jotricum candidum, and also bacteria as Brevibacterium and Propionibacterium. Moving on to the wine, it consists of around 86% water, 13% alcohol, and 1% metabolites, secondary metabolites. This complex mixture of chemical compounds define a wine appearance, the wine color, aroma, flavor, and mouthfeel properties. These sensorily active compounds originate from the grapes, from microbes, which come from the soil of the vineyard and from the winery, and when it is used, from oak. Grapes and grape masts naturally contains mixture of microbes. During fermentation, there is a sequential development of some yeast and bacteria. And once anaerobic conditions are established in the vat or tank, nutrients become depleted and the concentration of ethanol increases. Such conditions favor Saccharomyces cerevisiae with the most efficient fermentative metabolism that are able to withstand low pH, high sulfite, and high ethanol environments. A widely used practice is to inoculate grape mass with fast fermenting strains to ensure a rapid and reliable fermentation. However, by doing that, the desirable yeasts originating from the grapes have limited opportunity to contribute to the complexity of wines. Thus, to preserve the regional characteristics of the wines, some winemakers prefer to conduct spontaneous fermentations, comprising mixed and sequential dominance of indigenous, non-Saccharomyces, and Saccharomyces yeasts. A wine yeast converts grape nutrients into ethanol, carbon dioxide, and secondary metabolites through its glycolytic metabolism, which impart aroma that can enhance the quality of wines. Some grape-derived compounds, such as acid, including L-malic acid and polyphenols, remain largely untouched by the yeast cells, while other compounds are fully generated. A secondary process that can improve the quality of many red wines and some white and sparkling wines is malolactic fermentation, carried out by lactic acid bacteria during or after alcoholic fermentation. Malolactic fermentation is in fact a decarboxylation process in which L-malic acid is converted into carbon dioxide and L-lactic acid, resulting in deacidification, flavor modification, and microbial stability of wines. Oenococcus oeni and Lactobacillus plantarum are the main responsible for this process, since are the best adapted species to the harsh conditions of wine. The biosynthesis of aroma compounds during malolactic fermentation includes the activity of various enzymes present in lab, such as beta-glucosidases. Malolactic fermentation improves wine flavor by reducing herbaceous notes due to 6 carbon alcohol content and enhance the fruity aroma, increasing ester contents. Although malolactic fermentation often occurs spontaneously by action of lactic acid bacteria from grapes and cellar, it implies risks such as consumption of residual sugar and formation of undesirable biogenic amines. The use of indigenous starter cultures best adapted to a specific wine production area is recommended to maintain the wine regional characteristics. In the wine industry, the growing demand for distinctive regional flavors have led to the concept of terroir, defining as the set of physical and biological characteristics, as well as local viticulture and winemaking techniques, which together determine the sensory attributes of the wine. There is evidence that microbial activity is associated with wine terroir. Nowadays, we know that the bacterial and fungal communities of wine are shaped by the grape variety, by geographical and climatic factors, and by wine sources. Thanks to next generation sequencing techniques that have been used to monitoring seasonal change in the microbiota present in vineyard and wine, this technique allowed to prove that the consortium of fungi and bacteria involved in wine fermentation correlates with the chemical composition of the finished wine. And the last word can be applied to wine, to cheese, and other fermented food, because it's a collaboration, all are the collaboration between nature and culture, express the characteristics of the region and the history and culture of the people who make it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucrecia, for this introducing us to this these fellow microbes that make us make the food delicious food for us. And now we go into the deliciousness from here, and I invite Professor Mari Sandell from University of Helsinki to share her experience on multisensory experience, and especially cross-modality. Mari, please.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. I'm professor in sensory food science and then also in sensory perception, both at the University of Helsinki and University of Turku. And I've been dealing, my sensors are like human senses. So I have been dealing with my group called Senses and Food in this area already quite many years, and it's very, very fascinating. And I try to activate you very different ways now in this next 10 minutes that I do have my speak. When we are talking about multisensory perception, this is how I understand it. So that we do have 5 senses which are activated different ways. And the object or the stimulus, it may be food, it may be both. In case of food, it may be also eating environment, but it may be any other object that our senses are perceiving. And we may have 5 senses, or then we may have less. So it depends on the person, and this is very individual. Our senses are working very different way, but in many cases, especially in food, there are several senses that are activated together, and they are really absorbing the things from the food. The perception part is pretty complex, and for different senses, there are different ways how they are processing the information from the object and how they are processed the information in our brains. So it is very complex. And maybe more complex is the way that how our experiences are really result. And maybe in case of food, quite often the wish is that food will create such kind of wow effect, or at least a pleasant effect, something that I really remember for a long time as a very, very good experience. But it may happen that the experience is also negative, or it may be even neutral. and it depends on the person as well. And this is very complex. There are very different kind of emotional factors that are also activated, and we can create also the emotional profiles for different experiences. Now I'm activating you with one photo, which is one of my favorite. Some people scare it. Some people think that it's very ugly. Some people think that that's something that I would like to try. So let's see that how you are now perceiving this visual stimuli. Think about this nice plate of vegetables. There are different kind of colors. You can see very different kind of plants, and it's very healthy. It looks that it's something that we are supposed to eat. Some people may see here a happy face. Some people may see here that there is something very weird going on. The question is that to eat or not to eat. And people are reacting very different way to this photo. It would be nice to discuss with you about your reactions as well. Flavor is something, the word flavor is missing here. Here I'm explaining that how the flavors are actually formed. So the flavor, which in many cases are confused with the name taste, it is actually the combination of retronasal smell, taste, and chemesthesis. I have been studying strawberry flavor quite a lot, and if we think about it from those factors that are contributing to flavor, there are different sugars and different acids and very different kind of volatile aroma compounds, and also polyphenolic compounds, and there are different kind of smells and taste and chemesthesis when we do have the strawberry in our mouth. So flavor is truly the multisensory perception and experience. We have studied in the project funded by Academy of Finland, in my group, the sensory perception with fins, and this is an example where we ask people to look at different kind of colored puddles. And we ask them different kind of questions. For example, put them to order, how sweet you think that the samples are, how sour they are. And this publication is a demonstration about the fact, one of those publications, that how by our sense of sight and different kind of colors are activating also the taste in our mind. And one point in this publication is also that those reactions are different. So we are not similar as human beings. Another publication which was published last year was dealing with food consumption and salad buffet. And we applied here the multisensory environment. So we had the control environment, control space, and then we did have forest kind of environment where people were selecting and eating the food. And actually, we didn't see that great impact on the environment in this food choice and the buffet choice. You can see the buffet there in the photo. There were 14 different kind of food items that people were allowed to select. But what was interesting that when we asked also the emotional profiles for these different conditions, actually in the case of the forest landscape, people felt that they were more happy while they were also eating and selecting and eating the food. So even more complex combination of both the food and then the environment. Then into the end of this talk, I selected several publications that have been published this year concerning the multisensory perception and different kind of food items. For example, there is one publication that the study topic was beer, very, very fascinating by different by several researchers around the world. And then another publication from Denmark, how the visual attention and sounds are contributing to the consumer food choice. Then cookies and dining out during now the corona conditions. These are all public publications, so just go ahead and read more about them. I'm not going to the details, but showing you that what kind of different things are published during this year. Sense of smell, so olfactory, sensory, and then the audio visual integration. It's very, very fascinating area for researchers, and there is one example of those. Then one example of the odor, taste, and texture interaction, and how this can be connected to the health issues such as overweight. Both the children and adults, they have been studied, because children and adults may also differ a little bit. And then let's remember that there are also individual differences. Then the taste and smell and how they are contributing to the combined flavor, which was published just a couple of months ago. Then the third slide, still about the visual and taste, their connections. Sweetness is always pretty interesting. How to enhance the sweetness without adding sugar. And here we are also a little bit going to the VR world that we will hear in the next presentations much more. So I'm not going to the detail in case of that. And these are very nice examples, all of these, that what all kind of activity we have in the area of the science concerning the multisensory perception, and also related to food. That was shortly my presentation, my 10 minutes. Thank you for your multisensory attention, and wish I activated you also with this photo from the real life. A lot of food, a lot of colors, and I wish that at least something for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mari, again for your inspiring presentation on multisensory perception in a sort of in this traditional world, and it was interesting to hear that multisensory perception and cross-modality takes place also in the real world. And now we move on to Dr. Jean-Christophe Sagnavong's presentation from University of Toulouse. And we hear state of VR and AR and so forth. Please go on.
Thank you, Anne. So I have a PhD in computer science, but I'm a researcher in cognitive psychology and ergonomics. So it's a specific profile. And then we try to make a fast state-of-the-art of what we can do with virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality for future food experiences. So I will start first by speaking about mixed reality, then the factors which have been identified. I will do, as my colleague, you'll see a little spectrum of the publications and the researches which have been done. Unfortunately, the only one she selected is the one I was not using, but I know it. And we'll see a bit what we can do in the future. So first, mixed reality. About, first of all, virtual reality, I think everyone knows what it is now. It's usually a computer-generated simulation. It's in 3 dimensions, and you have most of the time a headset. You can include in virtual reality use case watching 360 degrees videos, and it's quite used in sensory researches. So that's why I speak about it. Augmented reality, at the beginning, it was simply adding information to the real world, the same as your car can display the speed you are driving, for example. This was the beginning. After we have started to add 3D virtual objects, and what we call currently mixed reality, we could call it augmented reality, but with the evolution of the technologies, people have started to speak about mixed reality, which is a mixed and an interaction between virtual reality and augmented reality. So, and it has come with the most modern technologies, as you can see here, for example, with Microsoft HoloLenses, where you have glasses which are adding informations, but you can also have it in a simple smartphone using the pass-through camera and watching the real world with other things. And also with virtual reality when you have a pass-through camera. So if I try to use a reference, I can speak about the virtuality continuum. And if you see how the things are coming virtual, you can start by the real environment. And the more you become virtual, it's like this. So you are in reality, you are with a virtual headset, and you can augment the reality with information, 3D objects. You can also see it in the other direction by augmenting the virtuality by the real world. So, for example, a virtual world with a small window like this one, and it will be a kind of augmented virtuality. This is the usual use. And usually people see this with only two senses, the visual and the audio. So you have the real environment with everything, but they take care more of visual and audio elements, and you add visual and audio elements. The first augmented reality and the beginning of mixed reality, it was the museums with these headsets, which were telling you the story without the guide. But it can be also visual. So you see, it's about visual and audio. In our case, we are a bit more interested in real physical elements, or reality could be food or drinks. So we can augment the real world with virtual elements, or we can augment the virtual world with food elements, with drinks. So, and it is more what we are doing in one side, and the other side, it can be like this. For example, here you can change the appearance of food. Or here you can make the virtual world where you are navigating and grab some fruits in the trees, for example. And this is a bit where we are going, and what it is interesting me, at least. And so now I will speak about more cognitive psychology factors that I have studied and which I think are important for food, for sensory elements. The first one is immersion. And immersion is to understand it, the proper way, the right way, which is as an objective factor, which means it's not depending on the person, it's depending on what you are using, a big headset, a small phone. This is how you can describe the degree of immersion. And a speaker, but I can hear everyone, or a noise cancellation headset. It will change my degree of immersion. And so we can do it well. It's only depending on technology. And many researchers are speaking about it, mixing it up with the feeling of presence. The feeling of presence, you can describe it as the sense of being here. It's you feel you are in this world, and it's not depending on how much the technology is good. It's a bit more complex, and it's more individual. It's the same as for food, enjoyment, emotions that we can get. And the most recognized researcher in cognitive psychology about it, Lee, has described it with three main dimensions: the spatial presence, the social one, and the self one. For us, the social is not so important here, except if you want to enjoy food with other persons, but it's not the main. But the special in the self is more interesting. The special one, it's about the physical world. If you feel it's real, I mean, feel it's real. You can be in a cartoon, but you really feel you are in a cartoon, and that is not fake. And the self dimension, it's about feeling my hands are my real ones, for example. So it's about being here also, but it's about you. So I think it's important to have this in mind. A technical dimension, the acceptation of technology. If you put a headset on the head of someone, but it's 2 kilos and there are wires everywhere, it will not work. And it's important to measure it in order to know if it's your experience, which is good, bad, or if it's simply some technology which is not accepted because it's people don't like it. And I will not enter deep in it, but you have models to check it. And then I will tell something which is obvious for multisensory researchers like most of you, but which is not for everyone, and especially for cognitive psychology researchers. It's to take into account the idea of embodied cognition, but you are not a computer with a brain and the brain is all, but you think, you learn, you feel all the things with your whole body. And I know for most of you it's obvious, but it's not for the people, and maybe for computer science researchers, it's not also because they see people as computers. So this is to take into account also. So for us, I would tell, if you want to build a sensory experiment with mixed reality, keep in mind to take your self-presence, feeling that it's really you, your hand, that the thing around you seems realist, at least real for you. Accept the acceptance of technology, and about the embodied cognition, to have congruent moves when you eat, that it seems that you are grabbing the real things, but you have your tactile sensations which are real, because there are a lot of experiments which can be done. And if you train, for example, people to grab things in virtual reality, but there's nothing, and after you put them outside the box, and they are not able to open the door to grab a glass because they have learned to do it in virtual and they don't know more how to do it really. So it has to match, and that's the difficult thing. Here, the VR headset can also be tricky because of access to mouth is difficult. So many people are using straws, for example, but the straw, you know it's cutting a part of the sense, and so you don't feel, maybe for Coca-Cola it's okay, but for a nice wine you will lose some parts of the sensation. So I think it's important. The same, you have to know where is the food, and so it's difficult to know where are the cups, and people who will see it in or experiment this afternoon will see that with the cups not yet perfect. There are tricks to put trackers from the virtual reality headset on the plates, on the dishes, and so on. But if you have a tracker on fork, the tracker is much bigger than the fork, so it's not very convenient. And if you use a mixed reality headset that you can see through, like Microsoft HoloLens, it's good, but you cannot change the environment. They have a very small field of view, and so you can change the appearance of the food you are eating, but not the environment. So it can do some things, but not everything. Here you have a long list of the studies I found the most interesting, and what you can remark for it, and I was not searching to have recent studies, is that the oldest interesting I found has 3 years. So it's all very recent. If we focus a bit on the topics, they were searching, doing experiments with blue cheese, with wine and beer, with wine, coffee, lemon cake, juice, chocolate. So you see a bit about what they are studying. They have changed environment, and half was to see if it was changing the perceptions, and the other half was to see if we could replace sensory booths by virtual realities to have lower cost during researches. Another thing that you can remark, it's that there are most of them with quite old headsets, which are no more used, no more sold since years now. So I will tell it in the next slide, but yes, many nice things are to come because all these studies are with, not all, sorry, but most of them are with old headsets. And a lot of them were using not digital environment, but 360 degrees videos, which is nice, but you are not interacting with anything. You are immersed in a movie, but it's not as it's not giving all the perceptions, and I think about presence, it's not so high. And there are a few modern headsets, even if the year is not so modern. So the main conclusions from this is that the replacement for sensory booths are really working. Changing the environment of the food seems to have significant effect, but there's not so many studies currently. And this I already told you. So I think many interesting things will come this year, next year, and it's really, we have nice things to see and to experiment ourselves. I will finish by what we can do. I would like to improve food enjoyment by changing environment. If you can eat some, I don't know, the example is always bad, but I always have this one. If you can eat some sushi, maybe in Japan, or with an environment, a congruent environment, it can enhance this pleasure. And if it's working, why not to do it? It has been told the idea of changing the sugar perception to help people to have a better diet can be really, really interesting. We can do the same with the fat, with the salt. Maybe we can help the environment by making people to eat less meat, so there will be less dioxide carbon. So there's a lot of things that we can do with this. And the coming things are kind of experimental headsets. So I don't think they will come for everyone, but to experiment, it's interesting. There are virtual headsets which can give you sense, which can warm you a bit, send you cold air. So this can be quite interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jean-Christophe. And I think now we move on into art and technology part of this.
And that's why I stay.
Yes, exactly. And that is why you stay, and we invite also Bruno Mess from National University of, you say, yes, Argentina. Yes. Okay. So please, now we sort of combine all that theory into art and technology. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So thanks for having us, and especially thanks to Professor Anokopia and Seppo Salminen and Connect Foundation that made this possible. And I will start with a little story of how we started to collaborate with Jean-Christophe and how we designed sort of experiments in mixed reality dining. And previously, before I met Jean-Christophe, I was investigating the phenomenon known as sonic seasoning, a little bit in the line of what Marie-Sander talked before. That is how music influences the taste of food, in particular of wine and coffee. And we did some studies using temporal methods because music changes in time and wine changes in taste in the mouth, in time also, using temporal methods from sensory analysis. And we found interesting things. The ideas, for instance, you taste a wine and you select an attribute of which is the dominant attribute of the wine. For instance, for a red wine, we have these kind of attributes. And according to what music was played to the people in the experiment, or if they were in silence, the proportions and the timing of the emergence of different tastes of the wine was really quite different. So we did something similar with coffee afterwards, that is drinking coffee with different kinds of music that were thought to be congruent, cross-modally congruent to bitter taste or sweet taste. And we saw that there was not much sensation transference from, that is, the sensation of the music didn't go too much, didn't affect too much the combined sensation of coffee plus music, but there was a very important emotion transference. That is, the emotion of the music was really impacting the emotion of the combined experience of drinking a coffee, listening to that music. So when we, we designed some devices for doing this kind of experiments, like interactive glasses that sound when you drink from them, or, oh, this is sounding now, like this. So you synchronize the taste with the sound, or a smell organ that you can play and launch smells, and well, because we also investigated smell and music experiences. So because I work in an art and science center, so we are always trying to combine both kinds of investigation, research, and artistic experiences. So when I met Jean-Christophe virtually because of the pandemic, I was thinking on this impact of the atmospheres on taste, and in general, the impact of, for instance, visual atmospheres on musical experience. So we thought of a study in virtual reality, playing the same music in different environments, or different seasons, the summer or the winter, and having people to rate the emotions of the music. And we haven't done this yet. We want to know if this impacts their experience of the musical emotion. So something like this. People will, can I flash? No, but you will see anyway, no problem. So you play a music in a summer environment. And then you play the same music in a winter environment, and you write the musical emotions and see there is some difference. It's a classic method of writing emotions. So, and then we thought of combining this also with food. So what happens if we have contrasting atmospheres, and there is some cross-modal congruence between the sounds, the visual environment and food? What will people, how will people experience the same food or experience a food in this kind of environments? So this is the experiment that we will present today. And for the, let me play. You want to play? Yes, like this. The two ones or the first one? First one, please. This is one kind of environment, and the other one. There are contrasting scenarios. So we're going to go further, okay? And in the meantime, there was this experiment that we did with Sami Silen, Gabriel Vinderola, on what happens if you play sound to kefir during the process of fermentation. This sound has some effect on bacteria. So also in the experiment today, we will have environments related to bacteria or microbial environments like these ones, one for wine and another for cheese. So to play here. This is for cheese. So the
Yes.
okay. So these sounds were designed by Sami Silen and myself, and have some semantic relations with the food. I don't want to anticipate too much because there's an experiment involved in this. And also the videos were made by a Dutch artist, Rob Berg. They are called Being Inside a Piece of Cheese and the Expressive Life Inside My Plastic Body, with a 360 camera, and they try to express the sensation of being inside, like a zoom in into the bacterial world of what we are tasting. And with this, I give the word to Jean-Christophe.
So now I will tell a bit more about the technicals, but the same as Bruno, we will not tell things which can bias the measures that we will do this afternoon for the presential participants who will do it this afternoon. So I'm on the technical dimensions. We will synchronize, it's mixed reality. So we will synchronize two worlds, the real one and the virtual one. First of all, there are two parts, an artistic part and another part which is not artistic. The artistic part is with real wine. So here you can see real water because Anu was not drinking wine at this time. And you have real cheese. And the one was chosen by our colleague who was spoken before, just before. And we were having the virtual reality part with realistic appearance, with the cube of cheese and the glass of wine. And then when the people, and when you will pick cheese or take a glass, then you will be immersed in the 360 degrees videos that Bruno has described and shown to you. So here you are in the one from the cheese. This video have been made by Rob Berg, and you are also immersed in a sound and an audio environment which has been chosen by Sami and also Bruno. So this is the artistic part. On the second part of the experience, you also have food. It's a bit small in the picture, but you have here food balls. I will not tell you about what it is. These have been made this morning by, I guess, or yesterday by Nana Rintala. And so this is a real world. And again, we have a digital virtual reality environment. Bruno has shown it a bit. I will not tell so much, but it's looking like as if you are in the space and you are completely immersed. You can see planets and so on. With also sounds, which should be congruent with it. And we have a synthetic appearance of the football. So in contrario from the previous part, it's not realistic. It looks like something else. Here, it looks like little asteroids, for example. The difficulties of doing something like this is that you have the real world, you have the digital world. Here you can see what's inside the headset for the participant, and it has to match at a millimeter precision. And this is really hard. Current headsets are doing it, but it's not so accurate. So when you will do it, maybe you will have to search a bit your food, be aware about it. Or in our setup, we are doing something that, for example, we are using our Meta Oculus headsets and or setup, programming setup. But I do, yesterday, an experimental one has been released by Facebook to experiment for developers only. So we are in advance from them. So that's why it's a bit still a bit tricky and a bit fragile solution. But it's coming fast. But that was the main difficulty, and to have markers and really to make this synchronization between the two worlds. Here you can see better my finger, the cheese. I'm sorry, in fact, the remote people don't see the marker. So here you have my finger, the cheese, and here you have the same thing. So you see it's matching very well, but it has, for you, when you press the cheese, you have to feel it at once. So it's at 1 millimeter maximum, but it has to be accurate. And this is not so, this is really a difficult thing. For the glass and the food to be grabbed, so you have to take care. And the same when you pick a glass, you pick it in real, but you want that in virtual reality it's picked. So it's difficult to detect, and sometimes it's difficult to release. So for the people who will do it, think when you grab your glass to open widely your fingers, else you will have released the glass, but it will stay with you in virtual reality, and you will not know really what to do. The same for orientation. In the experiments I've described, there are a few ones who have sensors a bit like in the one Bruno has shown about in the video. And these sensors help to know the orientation of the glass. We are not doing like this because we don't have this kind of sensors with the Oculus Meta headset. And so we do with the fingers, but the fingers, the more we are near from you, the less the headset see them. And so you have the impression the glass is a bit shaking, but nothing is no illness, neurological illness is coming to you. It's only the headset. And so just trust your fingers, you know how to deal with a small glass. So yeah, shows this here. It's perfect, but it's not always perfect as in this photo. So this cool experiment has been designed by me, Bruno, and Sami. This afternoon, we will do a kind of preliminary experiment where you will experiment it as you have not been biased too much by us, I hope. We will do some measure, and there will be a few questionnaires to answer.
Question time, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bruno and Jean-Christophe. These are really for the webinar audience. You have learned these experiments now by this presentation, and those who are present here will have the opportunity to experience those here on site and in real life, virtual reality in real life. Now we have a few minutes time to discuss about this thoughts and impressions about this session number 1. I would like to hear your opinion on the near future. What is the near future? You said in your presentation, Jean-Christophe, that the development of technology is really, really fast. How do you see what kind of now we probably, at least what I know, the the applications in this VR mixed reality applications, they are a lot in entertainment. They are probably a lot also in the business world, in which we do not know. Maybe you can share that too. How widely these technologies are applied now in the different sort of platforms, whether it is industrial development work or health technologies. What about this idea when we talk about this VR dining, and you, for example, mentioned that might be a good tool to help people to improve their diet, for example, or that can be used for people to sort of enhance motivation, for example, for sustainable choices and so forth. How do you see that future? How close is that kind of future at the moment? You can come here, yes, and you don't need to know, but it would be nice if you guess, because you probably have the best guess.
First of all, it's really very used now in industry, in avionics, in medical. They are using virtual reality, mixed reality, but it's where it's important when they have money, so they have very expensive headsets. It's also very used in entertainment with cheaper headsets, like the one we are using in our experiment, but the market is mature enough to make light headsets, like a bit big glasses that will not disturb so much. So it's really coming fast. And for example, 1 month ago, a very big virtual reality society, HTC has made a new headset, which is for entertainment, meditation. It's very light and so on. But unfortunately, they have used all technology, and it will not be accepted because it's too expensive for something to all. But they are ready. Next year, maybe we'll have Apple one. And so I think it's coming fast, and in the same idea we are, there's a lot of how to do sports, to do meditation, and I think to have a nice dinner in another environment, it's also coming far if we develop it. So I think it will.
Okay, so you think
fast.
like next April we will all be dining together in virtual reality?
Not next April, but maybe it will be feasible in 2-3 years. In 2-3 years, it's really possible because it's going fast, and it needs something acceptable. That's why I was speaking about acceptance of technology, which is light, which is not disturbing you, which has no wires, because you don't want to eat with a wire.
Yeah. Yeah, surely. And at the moment, really, the food experience in virtual and mixed reality world, it is very different from our conventional dining. So we probably need to, I don't know, we should be ready to accept sort of new experiences. We probably should not. This is my feeling, that we should not try to mimic the conventional dining experience, but rather take it as a new one, extension or expansion of our experience.
Maybe I have forgotten to tell something very important.
Yeah. Do you want to come here?
Yes. Maybe I have forgotten to tell something very important. Everyone is speaking about the metaverse currently, and this should be an important part of the metaverse. If the people will join in virtual reality in other worlds environment, and if they can also have dinner together, it will be kind of a sense more and wonderful experience. if you can have a dinner with your friends which are at the opposite side of the world.
So we move on to session number 2, which is on commensality, and actually we go back to the world of microbes to learn about commensality of microbes and the senses that they do on commensality, which we don't. And we have in our artistic examples, we have then tried to learn from microbes. But before that, I'd like to invite Professor Seppo Salminen to tell us about what is quorum sensing. What is quorum sensing of microbes? Seppo Salminen from University of Turku, please.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you for the introduction. And now we go from dining of humans to dining of microbes. And that's actually telling you something about the 2.5 kilos, at the most 1.5 to 2.5 kilos of microbes every one of us is carrying in our gut. And those are the microbes that are discussing with us, and we are discussing, we are responding. And if they are the right microbes, we don't have to think about them. If they are the wrong microbes, we feel quite quickly that something is wrong. So quorum sensing in a way is the process of cell to cell and cell to human communication in bacteria. As said, bacteria will talk with each other. That's the quorum sensing part. But they will also talk to us through our immune system, through our gut, through epithelial surfaces, and we respond. And it's quite common to forget that we also respond to those questions. So for a long time, we believed that the bacteria are just quiet, silent, and not doing anything. But in actual fact, the more we have, the more refined methodologies we have, the more we understand that there is intercommunication, high level of intercommunication between bacteria. They produce signaling molecules, and these actually help us to understand the communication, but they also define how the bacteria act. And this system is called quorum sensing. So regulation allows bacteria to have the so-called social life based on control of components secreted. So all of this is actually taking place by signaling molecules. And what we are trying to do, we are trying to understand the change in concentration of signaling molecules and how they interact with our genetic transcription and the transcription of other microbes. This interaction is actually seen in many gut bacteria. It's also seen in bacteria that we use in foods. And if we think about quorum sensing in bacteria, low cell density is something that we should perhaps avoid. And high cell density is something which makes the group behave in a certain manner. And we can modulate that manner by eating. So dining with each of us, we are actually dining with our bacteria at the same time, and the bacteria are dining together. So it's a real community working on dining and nutrients that we get. Then fermentation. One of the important things that we forget today is that fermentation has been most important for the survival of mankind. If we go back in time, about 60% of our food supply has been fermented. So we have had a huge amount of bacteria ingested every day. And now we are doing our best to actually make our food sterile. We pasteurize, we UST treat, we even sterilize food. If we think about, for instance, the first food we had, which is mother's milk. mother's milk is full of bacteria, viable bacteria, dead bacterial cells, bacterial metabolites, signaling molecules for the microbial community. And if we compare it to infant formula, practically no bacteria, no metabolites, no bacterial cells. And it tells you already that that kind of introduction to our food system is going to have a profound effect. If we lose the fermented foods like we have lost them in the Western diet, it's also important that we lose the bacterial input. And so the quorum sensing part is going to be quite different as well. Fermentation gives us dynamic stresses, and lactic acid bacteria were taken out as examples by Lucrezia. And when we do fermentation, there are several different steps that actually influence the bacterial signaling. Fermentation makes the bacteria produce not only aroma compounds, but these signaling molecules that influence the transcription that we see in the genes and the way they behave. Of course, at the same time, you can produce different flavor profiles, you can produce different industrial properties, but the main thing is that fermentation is something that we perhaps need more and more in the future again. This has been noticed by the European Commission, and they are now actually funding a lot of research to fermentation, and especially plant product-based fermentation. It is in the European Union goals for 2030 to have a significant amount of plant-based fermented foods in our food supply. So what does it mean? It means that the bacteria actually have a significant role in fermentation control. We have seen it our experiments ourselves. Bruno was mentioning the kefir and the South American sweet kefir that Gabriel Vinderola has been studying with us. And later on, short-term fermentation with yogurts. And this is something where we need to continue and also understand that if we have simple things like sound or music, how they influence the fermentation control. And perhaps they are also important in producing specific sensory profiles. And at the same time, they could be an ease for the industrial process. We have seen this, for instance, in beer production. If we give specific sounds to beer when it's maturing, we can provide different flavor profiles, and different sensory experiments have proven that the modification of beer flavor is actually quite possible just by the simple use of different sounds or different types of music. So what do we know about it now? If we look at early human diet, there were high numbers of microbes in the diet, and they produced a high level of interaction with the immune system, driving the immune system towards health. So what we have done, we have industrialized the human diet, very few microbes, and low levels of interaction with the immune system. So we are priming us for the situation where the simple pathogen can cause a lot of harm because there's no resistance in the normal microbiome. So what do? Microbe supplemented diet, as even the European Commission is suggesting us. More fermented foods, new types of fermentations, and going to actually plant-based fermentations. Just recently published in Cell, one of the top journals in this area, indicating that if we do replace even high fiber diets with fermented food diets, we are actually improving health and well-being quite significantly. So this all in the face of bacteria discussing with each other and discussing with us. So perhaps that also gives us some future directions for nice research projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Seppo. This quorum sensing of bacteria, at least for me, it has been really one fascinating new finding, or I have understood, I have learned new things during this project. And now I would like to move onwards to in this session number 2 into art and technology, where our researchers and artists together has been inspired by, for example, this quorum sensing of microbes, and built 2 different types of VR. I don't know, how would you call them? Are they VR? Are they mixed reality? Are they, how would you call this quorum sensing and tweeting the feelings examples that I hope we will hear now, presented by Bruno Mess and then Sami Silén.
Okay, thank you. And about the classification of this experience, I really ask Jean-Christophe, is an expert. It's not virtual reality for sure. So this experience that we are going to present today after the webinar is inspired by this these experiments that we have been doing with Gabriel and Seppo and Sami on fermentation of bacteria, the effect of sound of fermentation. We were inspired by this special bacterial sense by which they detect the presence of others and they change their behavior, turning to a collective way of behaving. And what to do a metaphor of this in the situation of commensality, in the situation where we have dinner together. This one, yes. So the idea is that to metaphorize this special sense at the human level by invoking the sense of touch, of human touch, because we reach and contact the others by this kind of, by this sense, precisely. And also in this installation, we try to increase the sense of remote presence of the other people that are having dining with you. So how do we conceive this? Well, there are many layers involved in this installation. So first, let me skip this and go to the scheme of the installation, and then I go back to this. So the idea is that you have a special sub-bowl, and the bowl has an embedded tablet in it. And I'm going to return to this. And you eat the soup using a spoon that has an accelerometer. You see in the basis of the spoon, the second picture, you have this capsule, and there is an accelerometer that measures the force that you apply to the spoon. So you eat, and this force is detected, and the signal of the accelerometer is controlling sound, is controlling the faders in a computer that regulate sound intensity. But you don't perceive it as sound, but as a tactile stimuli, because we send the sound to these special belts that have transducers that vibrate in response to the sound. So when somebody eats at the table with this spoon, the other people feel in their bags the result of the activity of eating of the other of this person, and it's more intense as it depends on the intensity of the activity of eating of this person. So you can eat in darkness, but nevertheless feel the other people eating with you via this extended tactile sensitive metaphor of quorum sensing the others dining with you. But I want to return to the soup bowl because there is another layer of meaning or it's another idea embedded in this, that is using tablets or using digital devices at the table. So like in contemporary art or art in general, you maybe have different layers of meaning that are not strictly related or strictly consistent, but they're like different concepts that mix in some way in a piece, in an installation. So the soup bowl is based in an experiment on cross-modal correspondences. And I want to show you a little video on this.
We present conceptual design of tableware that explores the use of digital tablets embedded in plateware for the creation of multisensory gastronomic atmospheres. And it was conceived from the results of a pretest on cross-modal associations of shapes, colors, smells, and materials with 4 emotions induced by music: energetic, tender, y no, sobrecogido in Spanish, as in the experience of listening to quiet organ music in a temple, for example, and the emotion of agitated. Each video is accompanied with smells presented on perfumery strips. Gas and dollar bill smell for energy, pear and apple for tenderness, absolute rose for awe, and sea smell for agitation. We are currently analyzing the results of a new test and plan to use them for the design of real plateware or for designing the environment at dinners in virtual reality.
So that was the experiment. So people listen to different musics and they draw shapes inspired by the music. They select materials from a list. For instance, is this music related to wood, to metal, to stone, to water, to liquid, and also colors. And we are now, this was an installation in a museum, and we are now here, we're going to present the actual plateware inspired by musical agitation. So this is combined with the quorum sensing. We present like 2 ideas, or more than 2 in the same installation. Another thing is that we want to reflect on the use of digital devices at the table, which is generally regarded as a negative because we are concentrated in the tablet, not interacting with other people. So they are like interrupting social interaction and commensality. But here we embed the tablets in the plateware. They are used to generate a multisensory atmosphere with sounds and colors that are shared by everyone in the table. So Sami, this is some photos, but Sami has nicer photos, I think. And he's going to talk a little bit about the technical implementation of this quorum sensing installation.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Sami Silen, and I'm a PhD student here at the Turku University. And Bruno already told some technical things about our quorum sensing system, but I'm going to give some glimpse and maybe tell more about the process, how this thing has been evolving. The system is based on basically the three objects, which are the spoon with the motion sensor attached, and then we have a vibrotactile transducer, or actually two of those inside the cloth belt that we here see on the left. And then we have this glass bowl and a plate on top of that, and we call it like Bruno told, agitated plate. And in the center of this system is a motion sensor that is attached to the spoon, and it holds an accelerometer, a microcontroller, and a battery. And this thing tracks the movement of our hand and converts it to a sound and vibration. But the system is not that simple. We need something else also, and it's based, like Bruno told, on a code on a computer. But we need several kinds of things and programs. In this system, we are using 4 different programs, or should I say programming tools, which are called Mosquitto, Arduino, Processing, and Ableton Live. And all of these require some programming and making some codes how these motion sensors will react with the system. And then, of course, we are in a wireless world with the motion sensors. So we need a Wi-Fi router for having this network, because the devices are, of course, talking to each other wirelessly. And then from the computer, we go out with the audio device that leads the sound to amplifiers, which supports the sound and amplifies the signal, that it can be used by tactile transducers, which looks like that. It's a kind of special speaker which not have this basic system that the usual speakers have, the box and the cones and things like that. It uses a surface to produce the sound or to protect the sound, and it can be attached to several kind of surfaces. And the advantage of this kind of speaker or transducer is that they are small size and they can be hide in different kinds of places. For example, the belt we are using in this solution. And then a little closer look about the spoon. The motion sensor is attached to the spoon with this special 3D printed container that we have created. We have another model of this, but now we are using this and making experiments with this kind of a solution. And then a little more close look about the plate. This is how it all started, like a very accurate drawings about the model that had been created by Sebastián Tereshko in Argentina. And the first, I didn't know if this is the real first version of the plate, but yes. So this, as we have seen this already, was the first that we got involved here in Finland. But we have several versions of this. So this is, I think, version 2 or 3 maybe. And this is very close to the model that we ended up with. We have had a very, we have been very lucky to have a Nuutajärvi class school also involved in this project. Teacher Marika Kinnunen and a class artist is our collaborator there, and we were glad to have them involved in this project. On the right, you see the bowl that we are using as our model nowadays. And this is what we end up. We have been experimenting with the final product with two kinds of solutions. Firstly, we have on the left side, we have this plate, and underneath we have, of course, the iPad and some food on a plate. And on the right, the whole system is basically the same, but we have the bowl underneath the plate and maybe a little more of these glass balls that we also use. And then to make this system work, we only need two things more. We need some special sounds. How would we express the feelings or associations we want to create with this system? And of course, the video which is projected under the glass ball, the agitated plate. Thank you.
Going into another installation on communality and commensality of dining, and Bruno will introduce us now the T2M installation, please.
Yes, thanks, Anna. Yes, I'm going to try to be brief with this. This is another experiment with commensality, but creative commensality, if you want, because the idea is that you can, using this system, you can tweet your feelings or thoughts or comments on a common and shared experience, be it an artistic experience, a shared meal, or any kind of shared environment. And you can express verbally any kind of thoughts related to this experience, and the system, if you tweet these sentences and thoughts, the system will detect the tweets, analyze the sentences, extract the main grammatical structures, like substantives and adjectives, and retrieve music tagged with these words in a database of sounds called FreeSound by University Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. So it's like you produce a music of concepts. You tweet concepts or any kind of ideas, and the system sonifies these sentences. So you create, together with other people sharing the moment with you, a soundscape that is created in a collective way. So this is like a scheme of, not the words, but this is a scheme of how this works. There are some changes in this new version. This is an old scheme, but for instance, at Pertium, they are the fourth box. I'm not very good with the pointer. Is a semantic system that detects the words and substantive and adjective and extract it. We use a SPACY system, a different system, and we have programmed it now in Python, so it is more open to development by other people. So I'm going to show you a short demo of you tweet, for instance, try sour foods such as lemons. Its fresh floral scent over a base note of musk awakens the senses. And you put a hashtag, and the system will detect some words like this. present fresh. It finds a sound file tagged with the words fresh, send another file, and combines this in a soundscape, in a composition in real time. Then another person tweets something different. And the system extracts the word fruity, try. We show the rules and then the name of the sound files and the user sound file to the pre-sound that is also connected with. And we plan to use this today to create a soundscape based on people's comments or opinion or thoughts on the future of digital food, which is a theme today. So thank you very much, and this is the tutorial.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruno. And then we move on to our last speaker of session 2, choreographer, dancer Maria Senya from University of Buenos Aires. Maria, please.
Thank you, Anu. A couple of years ago, with some of the people who accompany us here, we did a multisensory experience in Norway, organized by another course modalist friend, Erik Fuladi. That's us. One of the events was to give a show in a barn transformed into an artistic space that is called Jensaloda. At the end of the event, Erik offered the code to share with the spectators, and we all ate together at a long table, talking and sharing about the experience of the performance and also enjoying the food and the atmosphere. I think that there we touch the core of the connection between commensality and art, which is for me to share what feeds us. Art is also spiritual food that shelters us and makes us feel and think differently and has the power of transforming us. Above all, it gives us an opportunity to be generous against selfishness and individuality. Both sharing food and art is an act of transsensorial encounter, which invites us to stop and contemplate with all our senses together. On the day of the barn in Jensaloda, I met my artistic companion, Antti Meyer, with whom I made the photo performance Smell project, Emotional Weather States. This piece traverses through transsensorial images, each sense is translated to another, from the visual images to the soundscapes and smell, through the temperature, pointing out the impact of the climate on the landscape, and also through emotions on the body. Body and natural landscapes, material variable of visual content, have been affected with the weather and emotions, immaterial variables. All variables are dynamic and can transform one another. The choreography returns to nature, where I have taken inspiration as a child, observing the shapes of the waves, analyzing the flights of birds. I think Aistikatila is a very interesting space to present this work because it is an experimental, multisensory space for commensality. I am glad that the audience that is present here can try this spiritual food. And for the rest of the work coming soon at the Aistikatila webpage. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Maria. And we will see your video presentation soon after this. But before before we go to that and finish our webinar, are there questions or comments that you would like to ask or share? The thought that came to my mind while listening to these two sessions here was that in the presentation of Jean-Christophe of the VR, you introduced the three modes of presence, the spatial, was it the self-presence, and then social presence. And you pointed out that in this VR mixed reality concept and installations, we mostly, or research is mostly interested in this spatial presence and self-presence. But at least to me, when I followed this session number 2, I got the sort of the impression that actually could that kind of installations that we have these quorum sensing and tweet the emotions installations, would those be the approaches that we could with help of technology then also enhance or express this social presence too? I don't know, this is an amateur question, but I would be glad to hear any of your comments on this thought.
I think what you just told, if I understood well, it's very connected to the metaverse I was speaking before, and it's not what we have studied currently, but it's the following steps. So I should have told this, yes, because we will share the things and the social presence will come. It's only not what has been studied at all for now, because until we have an interesting metaverse or social virtual reality, the dimension is not existing yet, but it starts to, and it will be something very fast to do. So I think you're right, and the jump will be soon.
Okay.
And I was a bit wrong telling, but it's not yet. It is, but it's not yet studied, because it's not yet present, but it's something coming fast.
Yeah. But do you think that these kinds of technologies that were introduced now, and we will hear after the webinar, we will experience those or test those. Do you think these kind of technologies would be part of that, or would they be something completely different?
For me, these things will be integrated, for example, in mixed reality, because we have, and I do the same as what we are doing. I want to do it with a headset and with the same transducers. And so I think it will be even more immersive and with this social feeling. I don't know if it will spread without the other dimension, because I think they are also important. That's what I can tell.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Other comments or questions, or shall we move on to Maria's emotional weather states installation? And by these words, I really thank you all for participating this event, both here on site and there as webinar guests, and at least for us, this has been a really interesting journey to explore new possibilities and really combining or merging science, technology, and art into something new. Thank you very much for your attention and interest. Thank you.